Welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. Happy Tuesday. I hope your guys' week is off to a great start. I am back at it with another video, and it is that time again that we are going to be doing our Zodiac profiles. We are going to be talking all about Virgo. No better time than when the Sun and Mercury are in Virgo to do this episode. And I'm calling this Virgos the healers of the Zodiac. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. Leave me a comment below, especially if you have any personal placements in Virgo. I'd love to hear what you have, including if you have any 6th house placements as well. And I will do my best to make sure that this is as detail-oriented and organized as possible. I know you guys will be the best judges of this information. And don't forget to check out my beginner's astrology courses, my Astro 101. It's available on my website, and I teach astrology. So if you want to learn beginner's astrology, how to read a natal chart, the ins and outs of placements, aspects, planets, and signs, that is your go-to lesson. If you want to learn how to read astrology with me, check out beyondtheveiltarot.com. All right, so this is all about Virgo today. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a rundown on the sign. We're going to do it similarly how we did the other 5 signs, and we're going to go in depth and talk about the archetype of Virgo, some of the characteristics, the difference between a sun, moon, rising, and much, much more. We will also be touching on planets in Virgo as well as planets in the 6th house and your natal Mercury placement. All right, so let's get started. So first of all, obviously Virgo, the dates for Virgo are going to run from about August 23rd through September 22nd. And the sign for Virgo is the Virgin. Now, Virgo is the 6th sign of the Zodiac. It's an earth sign, so it is stable, it's really focused, it's practical, very grounded. And this is a sign that is mutable. So that means that it is changeable, it's able to adapt, and it's very flexible. Now, Mercury rules the sign of Virgo. Mercury is obviously about communication, information, how we think, how we write, how we learn, anything that is also relating to travel or business. So that's a big theme when we look at the planet Mercury. And in terms of its polarity, so all signs are considered either negative or positive, or masculine or feminine. And this is actually considered to be, introverted. So it is more feminine, it is yin, and it's receptive. Now, the colors that are associated with Virgo are associated mostly with like greens. Sometimes we'll see browns or earth tones, but also we can see connections to white and gray for simplicity as well as purification. And if you're a rock hound and you're into gemstones, great stones for this particular sign would be carnelian, peridot, agate, and jade for their healing properties, for their connections to some of the kind of personality traits and themes revolving around the sign of Virgo. Now, you guys know I'm like a big mythology buff. I like to teach you guys a little bit about the myths surrounding the various 12 zodiac signs. But the Virgin is associated with Virgo, and the Virgin comes from various ancient, myths. In Greek mythology, Virgo is often associated with Astraea, the goddess of justice, who was also seen as the last immortal to leave Earth at the end of the Silver Age due to humanity's wickedness. Now, she was associated with the heavens and became a part of the constellation of Virgo, and the concept of virgin doesn't necessarily refer to sexual purity. It actually has to do with the theme of being whole, being complete, untouched from corruption, and this is about integrity and self-sufficiency. But there's also another group that I think is directly kind of connected to the sign of Virgo, and that would be the Vestal Virgins. These were a group of priestesses in ancient Rome who served Vesta, which is the goddess obviously of hearth and home, also family. And there's all kinds of connections, I think, to the archetype of Virgo and Vesta. Now, in mythological kind of background, and at least in Roman mythology, Vesta was one of the most important deities. She obviously symbolized the earth and the center of the home, and by extension also the state. So Vesta is associated with the flame. That was considered like the symbolic heart of Rome. And it was the duty of the Vestal Virgins to keep that flame going. It was considered to be a sacred fire that had to always be burning. So when we think about the Vestal Virgins, there was a very strict list of rules that they had to abide by in order to maintain that particular position. And typically there was a selection process where they chose girls between the ages of about 6 and 10 years of age. And it was a high Roman priest for the state that chose the potential, women that were going to be selected. And it was considered to be a great honor to be selected to be a part of the Vestal Virgins as well as their family. And this is partially because they were going to be essentially sacrificing or dedicating their life for at least 30 years to this particular position. Now, they were trained after they were selected. They had to go under, rigorous kind of training. They learned various religious rites, how to maintain the sacred fire, and other duties relating to their service. Now, their primary duty was to keep the Vesta fire burning, and if the fire went out, it was seen as an ill omen for Rome. So it was the Vestals' responsibilities, to keep that going, and if it went out, they could face severe punishment. For their religious rites, they performed rituals and sacrifices and participated in important state ceremonies, and they were responsible for the care of sacred objects. So that reminds me of like the archetype of Virgo, of maintaining, tending to, nurturing, caring, healing, keeping something clean and, fully functional. They were also considered to be rather unusual in society. They did not have the same legal constraints that women had. They could own property, they could make wills, they could vote. And a lot of this is because they did not belong to anyone. They were not married, they did not belong to a partner or a husband. So they were seen as someone who was self-sufficient and independent. Now, these virgins were highly respected. They were, it was considered a very, very significant crime if you were to be harming any of the Vestals. It was actually potentially punishable by death. Any man or woman or anybody who hurt any of the women would potentially either meet their untimely death by execution. And there was very little wiggle room with that because they were considered like sacred. Now, life as one of the virgins, they were celibate. So all of them took a vow of chastity for the duration of their service. Their vows were crucial as it symbolized their purity and their integrity for the Roman state. And after 30 years of their service, they could retire, they were free to marry, and they could choose to remain in service if they wanted to and kind of live their lives in high regard. So they were almost something similar to like nuns, like in modern day time, at least in my perspective. Now, there was a pretty significant punishment for violating their vows. Apparently, this was very unusual to happen. Usually you take your vows and it's something that's very sacred because you're not just representing the state of Rome, but you're also representing your family and the goddess. But if a Vesta was found to have broken her vows of chastity, the punishment was severe. They would bury them alive in an underground chamber, or they would execute them. And it was not a pretty process. So they were definitely put in a position of like fearing the gods if for whatever reason they were to break their vows. Now, towards the end of this particular reign of these groups, obviously Christianity was on the rise, with the Roman Empire, and the Vestal Virgins essentially became no more. Their role was diminished within society. We saw that Christianity was basically made the state religion, and it extinguished any sacred fire rites or rituals around 394 AD. Effectively, this ended the tradition of the sacred fire, and we started to kind of see a move or a shift away from some of these ritual practices. But the symbolism is very important here because they were not just religious figures, but they were also symbols of Rome's, connection to purity and stability. It really underscored the role and the importance of the hearth and home in Roman culture. And this was something that was extended from the state into, the various homes throughout that area. Now, modern interpretation says that the Vestals have been a subject of fascination in literature as well as art and modern culture, and it's often depicted as embodiments of purity, duty, and the sacred feminine within Roman society. So I always like to share that story because I love Vesta. Obviously, I think it's really cool that we had these groups that were able to devote their life to ensuring that that fire continued to keep going. And obviously anything that's kind of priestess oriented interests me as well. Now, Mercury rules the sign of Virgo, and Mercury is obviously, the planet that's known as like the messenger of the gods. This is why Mercury has connections with things like travel, exchange, business, commerce, as well as communication. So computers, texts, emails, phone calls, that kind of stuff. So Mercury governs communication, intellect, and the association with Mercury really reflects the analytical mind of Virgo. Very detail-oriented, and they have the ability to communicate effectively. Mercury's influence makes Virgo not only detail-oriented, but also amazing at processing information, solving problems, and organizing things. Now, some of the characteristics that you see with the sign of Virgo obviously is analytical, right? They're really great with being able to analyze stuff, break things down, understand concepts and ratios and things of that nature. But they're very practical, right? They think things through. They're detail-oriented, service-oriented as well. And we'll see that kind of theme come up through this video, not just with Virgo, but also with the 6th house, to be of service, to help others. They're known as perfectionists, but that's because they can spot when something is off, or they'll give a critique or some kind of, positive criticism to be able to make something more so perfect. They're very reliable. They have a tendency to be very aware of time, as well as organization and kind of time management, especially when it comes to their duties or their schedule. They're known for being modest, as well as very health conscious. This is a sign that does rule over not only health habits and routines, but also has connections to illness and being able to overcome illnesses or accidents. So their strengths would be seen as diligent, intelligent, loyal, very methodical in their process, helpful. But some of the challenges or the weaknesses that we see with Virgo can definitely be seen as overcritical. And, God bless Virgos. If it wasn't for you guys, I don't think the rest of the zodiac would be in line. But there can be this tendency to be super overly critical of themselves, and that can sometimes materialize as kind of projecting that in their relationships with friends, family, partners, coworkers, that kind of stuff. They are also known to be very worried, all the time. There is some kind of worry-prone mentality. Obviously, they're ruled by Mercury, so their mind is always on something, but it's also about constantly being in this state of what's going to go wrong, how can I fix it, how can I make things better, how can I better plan? So there is this sense of worrying about things because they're always trying to problem solve. Sometimes they can be seen as indecisive. I don't necessarily think that they are all of the time. I think that's kind of more like a Libra tendency, but indecisiveness can come up for Virgos, and part of that is because they can have a hard time choosing because they want to make sure that they're making the right choice or the right decision. Sometimes these choices can lead to obviously more anxiety, but also tendencies to be a little bit more pessimistic. And some Virgos would argue, well, it's not that we're being pessimistic, we're being a realist, right? We're going to tell it like it is. We're going to give you exactly, the information or the response or kind of the assistance that you need. But there can be a tendency towards pessimism in their communication. They are also sometimes resistant to change, which is fascinating because they are a mutable sign. But unlike Sagittarius, Gemini, and Pisces, they're a mutable earth sign. And earth takes a little bit longer to move, right? It's got some weight to it, it's heavy. So they can be resistant to change, but that's also kind of similar to them being indecisive. They can make decisions, but sometimes they don't know which one is best. They are willing to make change, but they only want to do it if they know that it's going to be something that is going to produce results, like a better job, a more stable home environment, a healthier relationship, these kinds of things. So they do have a little bit more of a challenge with change than some of the other mutable signs. Now, for archetypes relating to Virgo, obviously I love to tie archetypes into the signs so you guys can spot them in your everyday life. As you guys heard earlier in the video, I called Virgos the healers of the zodiac. And man, I gotta tell you guys, like some of my most favorite practitioners have been Virgos. Some of my best hairstylists have been Virgos. Some of my best herbalists, some of my best assistants and people who have kind of worked and helped me have been Virgos. But healers are definitely what I kind of connect Virgo to, because, this archetype is deeply connected to health and wellness and service. So they may be drawn to professions such as nursing, therapy, holistic health and healing, anywhere where they can really use their meticulous nature to help other people. But we can also see this archetype of kind of 6th house Virgo out in the world as some of these professions. Now, the second thing that comes up for me would be the analyst. And that's because, this particular archetype really excels in environments where detail and precision is paramount. Like, you have to know your facts, your figures, your numbers. You have to be on point. So they may be, seen as somebody who is working as an accountant or scientific research, maybe an editor for a magazine or for newspapers or even books. And their ability to really dissect information, I think, is one of the key kind of connections to this particular archetype, because they're just so focused on being able to hit that point and make sure that it's accurate and then relay that information to other people. Yes, obviously the perfectionist, a lot of people are going to say that, but that's because they're always really striving for flawlessness. That's really what they want. And part of it is because, they're not just overly critical, they're highly productive. Virgo placements, 6th house placements, they have to have something to do. They need a to-do list, they need a problem to solve, they need something to work through. So they are going to do very well, or you're going to see this archetype through professions where perfection is the goal. Things like quality control, design, and craftsmanship are some of the professions that I think I would connect to something that would be considered a perfectionist. Now, Virgo and the 6th house also has connections and correlations with the servant. And this is not in a subservient sense, but more the purest form of service, like the virgins, and their ability to service other people or a cause. So people who work in nonprofit, maybe volunteer work, or a role where their efforts directly benefit other people. But that's not limited to just those particular careers. I think of like the service industry, hospitality, working as an esthetician or a cosmetologist, a bartender, somebody who works the front desk at a hotel. Anything that's about providing services and being able to help people with the things that they need has that kind of connection to the archetype of the servant. And last but certainly not the least, this is definitely one that I feel like does fit Virgo very well, is the critic. So, when we think of critics, right, like reviewers or consultants, maybe people who review restaurants, or they're giving movie reviews or book reviews, maybe somebody who's really hardcore about reading reviews and giving reviews online for products or services. Anywhere where a discerning eye and the ability to offer constructive criticism is seen as an asset and potentially even a mode for making money. So they can definitely put some of these abilities to use in some of these particular professions. Now, I love playing the sun, moon, and rising game. One of my favorite things to do is to look at pictures of people or spot people and kind of assess them when I'm getting to know them or maybe reading for them the first time. And everybody always wants to know the difference between a sun, moon, or rising placement. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about how to spot the difference between these. Now, with this Virgo sun, so if the sun is in Virgo, this can also be seen with the sun in the 6th house. One of the biggest themes that you're going to kind of see right off the bat is neatness, right? Neatness. And that's because Virgo suns have a tendency to focus on being neat, having a tidy appearance. They definitely prefer a kind of clean, classic style over anything that's trendy or kind of flashy. They also have a tendency to be more health conscious. So they may be more health focused when it comes to their physical physique, clear skin, and a glow that comes from good health practices and good hygiene. But I want you guys to look at their eyes, because Virgo suns, I've observed, definitely have an observative or kind of like analytical eye, and they might have a sharp, discerning look that's on their face. In terms of their expression, they can have like a critical or sometimes like a thoughtful looking expression even when they're relaxed. And for their behavior, you may come across that they're a little bit more reserved. Very meticulous, yes, they can be critical, but mostly of themselves because the sun is in Virgo. and their approach to life is generally pretty grounded, and they really seek to improve the things that they touch. Now, a Virgo moon, on the other hand, we're looking at the emotional nature, what is a little bit more reserved and kind of behind the scenes. These are people that really appreciate comfort in the simple life. That's what they love. They prefer simplicity. They might be choosing comfortable, practical clothing over showy outfits, though still neat. They may also prefer natural fibers or colors and earth tones, not only for their clothes, but also for their home as well, because the moon obviously can be a reflection of that. They are also health focused. You're going to see that with all of them, but maybe not as outwardly health conscious as a Virgo sun. Their practices are more through good posture, their emotions, their demeanor, better or more so focus on their emotional health or home organization. But with their behavior, they can seem a little bit more cool or detached, and that's because they process their emotions, right, the moon, through analysis. So they're always kind of reviewing and thinking about how they feel. They may also worry more than others and find comfort in routine and also in their home. And they can have mothers or family members that come from like a background in a health profession. That's something that I have noticed with this placement. Now for the Virgo risings, on the other hand, so if your ascendant or rising is in Virgo, I find that this one's easier to spot, the ascendant sign. I always say that, Virgo risings have a tendency to have like a bit of like a widow's peak. That's something I've noticed with their face. They also are very neat, clean cut, well groomed. These are the ones that I think pay the most attention to their appearance from what I've observed. And their appearance really shows that they put some thought in how they were kind of, putting their outfit together. You'll see them sometimes with like the pocket protector, right? You'll see them with like the perfect part. You'll notice that they'll kind of peer over their glasses at you when they're talking to you, and they can have a little bit more of like a pointed nose, at least from my experience, from what I've seen. Now, their clothing, and I have a lot of friends that are Virgo risings. I always laugh and say that they have a uniform. If they find something that they like, they'll usually keep buying the same thing, the same cut of jeans, the same shirt, maybe in different colors, usually solid colors, but they're gonna have like a go-to outfit that is the thing that they like to wear the most. That's what I've noticed. Even if they don't wear a uniform at work, they'll wear the same stuff on a regular basis. And they prefer, like I said, stuff that is going to be functional. All the Virgo placements prefer functional over fashionable, but they do have an eye for detail. And I find that they wear clothes that are simple, but also timeless. So it doesn't really look like it could be dated in any way. Now, the Virgo rising body type, though, this is something you want to watch. They do have a tendency to be a little bit more slender. They can be fit depending on their health consciousness and their lifestyle, but I have found that the body is like a little bit more boxy and can sometimes be a little bit more petite. But similar to, like, let's say Gemini placements, longer arms, longer limbs. So you'll notice that with that mercurial influence, that they have longer kind of tone or slimmed arm and legs. Their face usually has more delicate features because it is a feminine sign. And like I said, watch for that discerning look that they'll have sometimes. And you can always see a Virgo rising because they're kind of scanning the environment and they're looking for like, what could be critiqued, fixed, what could be made better. Sometimes there can be a little bit of like anxiousness that can kind of come through them. But they're assessing their environment and they're kind of sizing everything up. And generally, I have found they're doing that not because they want to provide criticism, but they're just wanting to make themselves feel a little bit more secure and stable. So they want to make sure that they're in a stable environment. They care a lot about their appearance. They're very picky about their hair, the cut of their clothing. If they go out to eat and they get something on their shirt, it's going to be hard for them to sit there and enjoy their meal because they're going to be like, there is something off about, now what's on my clothing. So they prefer to stay neat and tidy. And they definitely come across very helpful, very analytical, and sometimes they can be a little critical in their interactions, but that's just because that is their nature. They're here to kind of help balance everything out. Now, when it comes to health and wellness, this is a big theme for Virgo. Obviously, I talked about the health and wellness focus for all of the 12 signs, but Virgo in particular, with the connection to the 6th house, is about health and habits. And this is not just Do I eat my vegetables? Do I go to the gym? Am I folding my clothes a certain way? Am I making sure that I'm scheduling my, regular checkup exams and my cleanings and stuff like that? But it can also be about serious habits, addictions, health problems, accidents, any problems with the body is associated with the 6th house. So the body part that's associated with Virgo is first and foremost the digestive system. There is a huge connection to that. There can be connections also to the intestines as well as the nervous system. So we see that all kind of connected. We know that sometimes Virgos are known for their tummy troubles, 6th house issues as well. But digestive problems can definitely be a theme that comes up for my Virgos and Virgo risings. Everything from food intolerances to, being allergic to certain things, to not being able to digest certain things, to like major tummy troubles, which definitely impacts their ability to kind of live like a normal life sometimes. Lots of 6th house and Virgo placements tell me that they have a very sensitive stomach, and their anxiety and changes with their emotions do have a direct effect on their digestion. Now, I say nervous system because anxiety, stress, these conditions are very much connected to the nervous system, but they're also connected to, or Virgo is connected to sometimes skin conditions. So we can see things like eczema or other skin conditions due to stress or dietary sensitivities. Now, Capricorn is more the skin, but we can see that if these are issues with diet or their emotions, that these are some of the problems that can come up. I have seen some Virgo placements also struggle with asthma or allergies due to environmental sensitivities and allergies sometimes to pets as well. We can see that because of the 6th house. So my health tips for Virgo placements, obviously number one would be manage stress, right? That's number one, is you want to manage stress. You want to give yourself enough time in your schedule coming and going to places. You want to make sure that you're taking time to just relax, rest, and unwind. Remember, Pisces is your polar sign, and that's what they teach you how to do. And anything that you can take to support your digestion. So you really want to be focusing on gut health with probiotics, fiber, avoiding processed food, maybe thinking twice before you go on like a culinary adventure in a place that is unfamiliar to you, and definitely focus on your mental health. Meditation, yoga, these are things that can really help silence the mind if you're having issues with overthinking or stress and anxiety. And stay on top of your routine checkups. Make sure that you're going for your regular kind of check-ins with your doctors and your practitioners or your dentist. And the same thing kind of goes for pets as well with 6th house placement. Some of you guys are naturally kind of inclined to be more so in tune with what your dog or your cat or your hamster needs. And a lot of you guys also know how to kind of help tend and care to animals as well. So that can be something that can also kind of not only help them, but kind of help your anxiety and your stress, because you guys do very well with animals. Now, like I said, Mercury is associated with the sign of Virgo, and Mercury is all about intellect. It governs how we think, how we communicate, how we process information. So when we think about Mercury, it rules Gemini and Virgo. And I think Gemini is just more the sense of receiving the information, getting the calls, getting the emails, responding back to things. And sometimes there's a tendency to kind of balance more than what we really can when we're looking at Gemini placements. And when we get to Virgo, this is where we start to kind of break things down. I always say, Gemini is where we start writing the book or we start writing the blog, right? And then we hand that off to Virgo, and they're like the editor. And they're gonna go through and refine things and cut stuff out, and, correct our spelling and make things better. So definitely the connection with Mercury and this sign, I think, is really important because, it's gonna shine a light on if you are a Virgo rising, right? Your Mercury placement is going to be really important. It may not be in Virgo, but the house and the sign and the aspects it's in are going to be important. So it's important to also kind of touch on Mercury, and I want to talk to you guys a little bit about Mercury through obviously through the signs, and we'll do that in a second. But before that, think about Mercury and what that means for your communication style. How you express yourself, and that's both verbally as well as in writing. So how you open up your emails at work and respond to people, how you respond to text messages, what you sound like on the phone. If you are writing a book, what is the tone of the book that you're writing? So there's definitely this sense with Mercury of like a connection to, clarity, wit, and the ability to really articulate your thoughts in a specific manner. The sign that it's in is going to tell you a lot about that particular tone, right? And then the house that it's in is going to tell you a lot about, well, where do you do most of your communicating and your learning? What subjects? And then the aspects are going to tell you whether or not that's something easy or challenging for you to do. Now, like I said, Mercury represents our thought process, but it also represents our learning style and how adaptable we are out in the world. So Mercury's placement can show you how quickly you grasp new concepts and how you approach problem solving. Because remember, Virgo is all about solving a problem, solving a puzzle, fixing something, taking it apart, finding the part, cleaning it out, putting it back together, making sure that it's fully functional. So there's also this connection to like curiosity and learning, right? Mercury is a very curious planet, and it really drives our desire to learn. And I think it's really about learning and exploring and then understanding things better and being able to develop a certain skill or a certain task. So that's why it's also connected to education, short trips, as this is historically, when we think about the third house, the short trips was about going and gathering information, sending a letter or going to another town to kind of go and get a product and like bringing it back home. And it's connected to our everyday interactions. And then obviously, the mercurial nature when we think about Virgo and Gemini, but when we think about Virgo, this is somebody who is very quick-witted, right? They're changeable. They can even have a little bit of like a trickster kind of vibe in their communication. Although I think Virgo is going to be a little bit more darker with their humor, a little bit more cynical. Like, they can give you criticism and then like kind of act like it's a joke, be like, oh, you didn't catch this? You didn't see this? Or is this your first time? And like, that's how they'll kind of get you with their wittiness. Anyway. So let's talk more about planets in Virgo, right? So even if you're not a Virgo sun, moon, or rising, planets in Virgo are going to express some of these themes of Virgo in their own way. I see planets as like the teachers, right? The house is the classroom where they're, teaching a particular subject. And then the sign is the lens in which they're going to kind of come across. So when we think of Virgo, the lens is practical, analytical, very data-oriented, organized, very specific. So we talked a little bit about the sun in Virgo. We talked a little bit about, the moon in Virgo. But just to give you guys a little bit more info on that, like the sun in Virgo, the sun is the core identity, right? So the core identity is going to be centered around service, perfection. So the sun in Virgo really seeks to improve and serve in some capacity. So this is going to be, shining a light up maybe on a person who might be highly organized and detail-oriented and driven by their desire to make things better, often in health, education, or the service-oriented field. Versus the Virgo moon, which is really focusing on emotional security coming from order, health, being of service. There's a need to analyze feelings rather than just feel them. So a Virgo moon is probably going to find comfort in routine. They might feel anxious when things get a little chaotic and express themselves through acts of service, offering practical advice. But Mercury in Virgo, this is where Mercury is at home. So it's in its domicile. So it means that it's kind of playing with home field advantage. Very strong placement. That's what we're experiencing in the skies right now. Communication is precise, analytical, detail-focused. There's a talent for editing here and for research and to be very clear and logical in their thinking. So a person with Mercury in Virgo, depending on how it's aspected, may excel in writing, editing, or any form of communication where clarity and detail are crucial, and they're seen as a very meticulous thinker. What about Venus in Virgo, right? Planet of love and beauty, money, values, and pleasure. Well, this is a particular sign where Venus is not as strong. She's a bit debilitated in this particular sign. What this means basically is that when it comes to Venus things, love, aesthetics, it's approached with a very critical eye. So there's a preference for practicality in service and relationships. Acts of service may be their love language. They may find that they're a little picky or particular, or maybe that they like relationships where they can actually help make somebody better. They may be attracted to partners who are reliable also, or intelligent, and share their values of health as well as improvement. And their taste in art and fashion may be a little bit more conservative, classic, functional, and maybe some would say a little bit more bland, but it depends on the aspects and how it's placed. But if you have Mars in Virgo, planet of action and passion, sexuality, conflict, war, I think about Mars finding its joy in the 6th house, that it likes to jump into a situation and provide a service. So if you have Mars in the 6th house, you have Mars in Virgo, depending on the aspects, it can be a decent placement. This is where action is taken with precision, and it involves detailed work and generally hard work as well. There's a drive to really perfect tasks, and also can be somebody who finds that they need a routine. They have to go to the gym, they have to go running. They're always working because it's hard for them to slow down in this sign. So they may be very particular about how they perform tasks, and they can also have a great deal of patience, especially when it comes to anything where other people may be critical of them. They're not going to allow that to kind of keep them from continuing on, because there is some connection to bravery with Mars in the 6th house as well. Now, if you have Jupiter in Virgo, right? So Jupiter, planet of all beneficial things, growth, philosophy, travel, education. Obviously, Jupiter brings expansion. So if you have Jupiter in Virgo, this is about expansion through service, health, and practical knowledge. And Jupiter's luck and growth are channeled into perfecting skills and serving other people. So success may come through detail-oriented work or health-related fields, or expanding knowledge in practical, useful areas like maybe nutrition or even technology. These may be people also who work in the field of education, sometimes law. I've seen that. I've also seen people with these placements that do very well with cooking, or even people who do some type of work where, what's the word that I'm thinking of? They'll cater, like a catering company, or maybe they have a company where they run restaurants, right? That could be something else that you see with Jupiter in Virgo. Now, Saturn in Virgo, all right? So Saturn, Lord of Karma, this is about maturity, restrictions, learning hard lessons, and mastering something. So Saturn in this particular sign is about lessons and limitation that come through work, health, or services. So there's a need to master skills, often to work through, to learn how to develop, discipline, just in general. So this placement in particular definitely indicates challenges that can come from health or work, but also a great potential for achievable, results through meticulous efforts and learning from mistakes. Now, Uranus in Virgo, this is really taking the theme of Uranus, which is about innovation, futuristic things, groups, collective patterns and themes. This is also about goals and innovation in health, technology, or service industries. So with this placement, sometimes there is a desire to revolutionize new things and how things are done, focusing on efficiency and health. And there can be a merger between collective groups and coming together and serving groups of people, or learning about new innovations in health and technology, and how that can really help heal the masses in some way. So someone with this placement may be involved in cutting edge health technologies, alternative healing methods, revolutionary ways to organize work, unusual kind of workspace and office spaces. I think of open concepts, or just maybe even flexible or hybrid schedules. That can be a theme with Uranus and Virgo. And Neptune in Virgo. So we've got the planet of dreams, mysticism, spirituality, right? Visions, also the connection to sacrifice. So, idealism and spirituality coming through service, healing, and sometimes the arts with a focus on perfection. So I have seen some people with this placement who had a past history in doing work, especially revolving around film or medicine. I've also seen that, this manifests as a healer that does some kind of spiritual healing work, or an artist who is really focused on inspiration coming from seeing the divine in the everyday kind of mundane world, or someone who serves other people in a way that feels very mystical. And then obviously, last but not least, we have Pluto in Virgo. And I know we've got some of you guys with Pluto in Virgo who watch this channel. So what this means is that we're taking Pluto, the planet of transformation, regeneration, rebirth, and we're putting it into the sign of Virgo. So we're going to see transformation through work, health, and service. There's a very deep and subconscious drive to purify and regenerate. So when I think about this placement, it makes me think about those who are involved in transformative health practices, working in places where they feel like they can change the systems from within. It reminds me of healthcare reform, but I also think about, Pluto being a planet that, this is going to talk about like large generational kind of groups. And, some of my favorite people are like people born from like the mid 60s to the late 60s who have some of those conjunctions that we saw with Pluto in Virgo, and you guys being born kind of like during like the sexual revolution. Pluto is a sexual planet. And this was a time where there was major revolution going on. We saw a push for birth control, women entering the workforce, people were talking all about free love. There was a huge push towards vegetarianism, obviously ending anything that people saw as cruel towards animals. So that's just a few kind of examples from like the Pluto in Virgo generation. But yeah, I think that that's a particularly interesting placement to have. And certainly in recent years, this group of people have really been activated with some of the trines, since like 2020, when Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto were all kind of moving through Capricorn. We saw some similar aspects also in the late 80s, early 90s with some of the people born with the Saturn, Neptune, Uranus stuff in Capricorn. So there's some similarities here. And just being somebody who was born during that time, a lot of like my teachers and some of my mentors and stuff have had, like the Pluto, Uranus, or different aspects with Pluto in Virgo. And I've always really appreciated you guys because you guys really kind of set things up for the future generations of people who are really trying to make sweeping changes, not just out in the world, but also in astrology. So a big thank you to you guys for that. All right, so what about if you have like your north or your south node in Virgo, right? So if you have your north or your south node in Virgo, this is important because these are the nodal shifts that we're actually going to be going into. So at the beginning of 2025, we're going to see the north node go into Pisces and the south node go into Virgo. So if you have your south node in Virgo and your north node in Pisces, you're coming into your nodal return. So you will be definitely kind of feeling the effects of this. But everybody is going to be experiencing that south node in Virgo for the next 2 years, starting in 2025. So definitely pay attention. North node, more destiny, dharma, what we crave, right? What we're learning to develop. So whether you have that natally in your birth chart, or maybe you're just looking at, the transit, the north node in Virgo is going to put an emphasis, if you have it in your natal chart, on your natal Mercury. So you want to look at what's going on with your natal Mercury. Obviously, this is a life path that is really encouraging you to focus on learning and service, focusing on details. This is about being very capable of developing practical skills, and it's about moving forward with humility and service and learning how to be a little bit more of a perfectionist. So as an example, you may find that your destiny is in roles where you can refine your processes, you can heal, you can teach others practical skills. This is about moving away from a more self-centered or kind of chaotic past life, right? Because you have the south node in Pisces. But if you have the south node in Virgo, all right, and this is for everybody else because this is what we're going to experience soon, that means that your north node is in Pisces. So this means that in a past life, there was south node, a tendency towards perfectionism and service and maybe being overly critical. So the lesson here is to move away from these and to go towards more broader perspectives and self-expression, right? North node in Pisces. And this is also a lifetime where sometimes organization and doing everything according to plan and trying to be very kind of like data focused doesn't really work, because North Node in Pisces is much more about the feeling. It's about, being compassionate and empathy, and it's about spiritual healing. It's like you can eat all of like the health food, you can go to the gym, you can take the supplements, but if you're not doing well mentally or emotionally, then you're going to see some health issues, because both of these signs represent health in one way. So an example of this might be a person who's very detail-oriented or service-focused, but you're learning to let go of the tendency or the need to be perfect. And you're embracing much more kind of spontaneity or creativity or spirituality, or learning how to just kind of go with the flow of life, right? And that's what we're going to be doing for the next 2 years. Now, when we think about Virgo and the connection to the sixth house, when I say that, it does not necessarily mean, oh, Virgo equals the sixth house, just so you guys know, unless you're an Aries rising. But Virgo has that association with the sixth house. Even if you have a different sign in the sixth house, it's going to have the same themes. So when we think about this, in particular, the sixth house governs, health, daily routine, service to other people, habits, the details in your everyday life. But this is also your to-do list. This is your pets. This is your office space, your coworkers, the plants that you take care of, and how you manage your daily affairs, right? And it's also about your approach to health and wellness. So you definitely want to take a look at what sign you have on the sixth house. That sign's going to give you an idea of how you approach that. And then the themes that are kind of connected to the various health issues that you may encounter throughout your life. And then planets there are going to add like an even, another layer to that. But Virgo's nature, this is really about, like I said, focusing on perfection. So it's about really getting down to the details of maybe not just how much you're eating, but what are you eating? Where does it come from, right? And have you made sure that you properly cooked it? Do you know exactly where you keep your folders or your notes in your desk drawer at work? Does it need to be organized? Does it need to be labeled? So there is something about being able to get organized and seeking clarity, because it's a Mercury kind of sign, through the sixth house. And it's all about analysis and the importance of being able to communicate, have a clutter-free zone, making sure that your health is fully functional so you can manage your day-to-day routines. And so your habits are everything basically through the sixth house. It touches on so much stuff. So when we think about the sixth house in general, when you have a planet in the sixth house, that's also going to kind of add another layer to this. So you may not have anything in Virgo, right? You might be like, I'm a completely different rising sign. I don't have any planets in Virgo, but I have planets in the sixth house. You're going to exhibit like Virgo-like kind of personality traits. So let's say, for example, you have your sun in the sixth house, right? So you're going to definitely find that your ego, right, the sun, is tied to work and service. These are people who don't know how to stop working. These are also people who may need to focus more on their health and their habits in this lifetime. There is a need to shine, right, through your job or your health practices. So somebody with their sun in the sixth house may find that they strongly identify, their identity with their profession. And they choose careers where they can lead or be recognized for their work ethic, right? Sun in the sixth house. Now, the moon in the sixth house, though, this is really about emotional security found in health and work and routines. So there's like a nurturing quality to your daily tasks. And a person who has this placement, they might feel more at peace when they have a structured routine, when they're caring for other people, or they have something to kind of nurture or look after, especially within the home or the family. And Mercury in the sixth house, very strong placement. Obviously, this is putting an emphasis on communication in your daily routines. So communication and mental focus are key here. Sure, you may work in health or service. You don't have to, but you might. And there's a knack for organizing and analyzing your everyday tasks here. Being able to work in an environment where you're writing, you're communicating, you're sending things, you're sharing, stuff like that. A person here, I think, does really well with like administrative work, and where communication and detail management is definitely major themes. Now, what about Venus in the sixth house, right? So Venus in the sixth house definitely can be a little bit more of a challenging placement. It is mirroring that Venus in Virgo. Remember, the sixth house can be about service, rolling up your sleeves, getting things done. And sometimes Venus in the sixth house, some traditional astrologers say, can be an indication of divorce. I don't always agree with that. Definitely airing out grievances in relationships, or there being some challenges in relationships for sure. Love and beauty are expressed through work here and health or service. So there's a desire for harmony in daily routines, but you may also be somebody who ends up meeting your spouse at work, or you work with your significant other love of animals, and it can also be a love of anything beauty related and incorporating beauty, music, art, harmony into your routines. So they might find pleasure, right, Venus, in creating beautiful work environment or health-related activities like yoga or cooking. I've also found that some of these people really do well in like consulting, interior design. If I see like aspects between Venus and the 6th and stuff in the 4th. I've also seen people who do really well cooking, catering here. And people who are really great at being able to help other people learn how to dress themselves. So like stylists and stuff can have some placements kind of connected to their 6th house with Venus. All right, so what about Mars in the 6th house? So I like Mars in the 6th house, and I like, Mars in Virgo, so that connection. Lots of energy and lots of drive are channeled into their work. And there is a competitive edge here with daily activities. Definitely a little bit more energy to burn. This person can definitely be very active, and they can be involved in sports or fitness, or they might approach their job with a sense of like enthusiasm and wanting to kind of get up and get things done. Now you can be a little bit more prone to having some health issues or accidents with Mars in the 6th house. It really depends on the sign and the aspects. So be mindful of that. And then Jupiter in the 6th house. So we're bringing the planet of expansion, we're putting it in the house of, work, health, and service. So there's luck in these areas, but also risk of overdoing it. Certainly overworking, I think, is a theme for any Virgo placement, but when you have a planet that makes things bigger, well, Jupiter in the 6th house can definitely emphasize that. It can also make some health-related issues seem much more challenging or much more like a bigger issue than you anticipated. But certainly success may come through higher education in health fields or expanding your work responsibilities in this particular placement. Now, Saturn in the 6th house, this is about taking the challenges and the lessons through work, right, or your health or your daily routine, and then the need for discipline and structure in your daily life. And this may be about facing health issues that require strict management, or that your career path is demanding but ultimately very rewarding. I feel like this particular placement does benefit from having a routine and knowing what is and is not good for you and knowing how to limit those things. Yes, you can have some challenges with coworkers that can happen. And also there is definitely a need to really pay attention to your personal habits if you have Saturn in the 6th house and being aware of those habits and how they actually impact your ability to be productive. Now, if you have Uranus in the 6th house, we're taking the planet of innovation and putting it into the service house. So there's a desire for change in your daily routines. I see this in a lot of charts for people who are self-employed or they're entrepreneurs because they kind of rebel with Uranus in this particular placement from a daily routine. So this could manifest also as somebody who frequently changes jobs, maybe a contract worker, someone who introduces new unconventional health practices, into their daily routines. This could also be somebody who is quite inventive and creative when it comes to finding solutions, and they may do that through using like IT or any new like technology to be able to do that. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, they just generally, they rebel against routine. I guess that's the biggest theme that I have seen with this particular placement, that they don't really like the 9-to-5 grind, and there can sometimes be some health-related things that can come up relating to the nervous system here with Uranus in the 6th house. You can be very sensitive to like certain stimulants, and stress can have a major impact on the body. And then Neptune in the 6th house. So we're taking this kind of spiritual idealistic planet and we're putting it into the house of health and service. So there's this dreamy, intuitive approach to your daily tasks. You're wanting to kind of go about your day like, you move through your routines and it's got to be like Zen. You're kind of going with the flow, but you're making sure that everything is kind of looked at and it's practical and orderly. I find that these are people who are really drawn to holistic healing, art therapy, or any job where they can help other people in a compassionate or almost like spiritual way. Neptune in the 6th house can also bring health challenges that are hard to diagnose or pinpoint that can be directly connected to emotional or spiritual, like vibrational issues. So be mindful of that. Seen this in the chart of a lot of people who work in veterinary science, who work in bars, restaurants, People who do art therapy as well. That's like another one that I've seen quite a lot actually in recent years. And then finally, Pluto in the 6th house. So if you have Pluto, planet of transformation, in the house of health and service, there is a very deep and often subconscious drive to change or heal through your daily activities, or heal your health problems, or to finally let go of habits, addictions, things that you just can't quit doing, because definitely Pluto being there can be a bit of a stinker. So if you have that placement and you're going through that transit, it can definitely materialize as, needing to undergo significant health transformations, working in fields like psychology research, or research where there could be a deep change that can kind of go on through doing that work. But this is also eradicating, especially in transit, it's like eradicating bad habits, or finally going, that's it, I'm quitting my job, or I'm leaving my one office and I'm going to a brand new office or a brand new department, because this is going to be about, the location and where you're kind of working as well. Definitely for me, Saturn, Pluto, and Neptune, those planets natally in the 6th house, are definitely more prone to having issues with habits and addiction. And then that's not just limited to drugs and alcohol. It could be sex, it could be porn. I mean, it could be overworking. It could be also eating disorders, anxious habits, things like that. So definitely I see that, I think, the most with those particular placements. And then finally, I want to take you guys a little bit through Mercury through the houses. So I'm pretty sure we did this when we talked about Gemini, but I just want to make sure that I touch on it because of that connection with Virgo. So, having Mercury in any particular house is really going to show me what area of your life do you like to learn, or where do you learn the most, or how do you learn, right? And that would kind of come more through the sign. So when we put Mercury in the 1st house, or any of the angular houses, that is definitely going to be a little bit louder. So if you have Mercury in the 1st, 4th, 7th, or 10th, it's going to be a little bit louder. Special attention to the 3rd and the 6th. That's where it's going to perform a little bit better. But Mercury in the 1st house is like giving somebody a megaphone, right? So it's communication and definitely your mental capabilities being key aspects of your key identity, because the 1st house is the first thing you see. It's what you get up and you do first thing in the morning. So there's a strong need to communicate and express yourself. So these people are generally very talkative, very quick-witted. They're seen as like a spokesperson or a communicator in social settings. Writers, news announcers. I've seen, so many people with Mercury on the ascendant, and they're definitely not going to hesitate to tell you what's on their mind, right? That's definitely a theme that we see with Mercury in the 1st house, because it's got like an Aries vibe. Anyway, we've got Mercury in the 2nd house. So if you have Mercury in the 2nd house, then your thoughts and your communications are revolving around 2nd house themes. So it's going to be values, possessions, earning money, and there's definitely a more practical approach to thinking. It's got a Taurus vibe. So, you may excel in financial advertising, or use your communication skills to earn a living, like writing about finance or selling through persuasive speech. These are also the placements of people who can be food critics, or people who work with data and they analyze information relating to money, investments, bonds, stocks, stuff like that. I have seen that placement. I have Mercury in the 2nd house. So, obviously I make money online doing readings and creating videos and teaching you guys. And that's also why I take so long to get through my videos, because my Mercury is in the 2nd house. Anyway, Mercury in the 3rd. So obviously special honorable mention to Mercury in the 3rd house because of its natural kind of connection to Gemini. This means that because it's Mercury's natural house, it's enhancing communication. So it's about learning, it's about writing, it can be about blogs and websites and radio and being on the news. And it's also connected to short distance trips. So there's definitely a keen interest in these topics, as well as interacting with other people in their everyday environment. So Mercury in the 3rd house, these people make great students, teachers, writers. They're often involved in community activities or local politics due to their communication focus on their kind of immediate everyday environment. Now we've got Mercury in the 4th house. So the mind is going to be on 4th house topics. So the thoughts are centered around home, family, roots. Communication may be more private or focused on domestic matters. So they may be, the family historian, or maybe they work in the form of a communication related field from home. Maybe they manage family affairs. Certainly there is a lot of communicating and going back and forth, or sometimes even changes of residence can kind of happen with Mercury in the 4th house. Now, if you've got Mercury in the 5th house, this is putting Mercury into the house that deals with creativity and self-expression. So that happens through communication. So there's definitely a love for learning, for teaching, for the performing arts. I see this with some really, I think, like well-known or notable actors who also like write some of their own shows or movies and then they star in them. I also feel like this is a placement that can indicate that somebody is like, actor, a poet, a comedian even, someone who teaches or entertains children using their wit or their charm. So like children's books authors, could be here too, or child educators could be here as well. Somebody very creative and like they know how to like tell a story and like keep people entertained. That's definitely a good placement for that. We talked about Mercury in Virgo, but also Mercury in the 6th house. They're going to be able to just whiz through their health habits, routines, stay organized, keep a schedule. This is also a placement where I feel like they're going to excel where communication is necessary in their everyday life or at work. I see a lot of editors with this placement. I see a lot of people who do a lot of crazy, intense communication-based jobs with this placement as well. Sometimes I've seen a lot of 6th house placements for actors as well. It's not just Leo. I've seen sometimes Mercury or the Sun in the 6th house. Like I have seen people who work as actors here because they take what they're doing so seriously and the way they create and they express themselves that it's just something they're always working on. Anyway, Mercury in the 7th, we've got the mind on relationships. So relationships very much heavily influence communication and thought process. So there is definitely a need for intellectual connection and partnerships. They're not just going to want somebody who just looks good. They might be attracted to somebody's intelligence. They might like the sound of their voice, right? They might fall in love with somebody just talking to them over the phone before they physically see them in person. So definitely they're also likely to choose partners or settle down with partners that they can communicate very easily with and work on also partnership roles. And they might be involved in diplomacy related matters, law related matters as well, because the 7th house is about being able to be diplomatic and kind of finding the middle ground. Definitely somebody who would like work with clients where you would be giving advice maybe, or you would be like consulting. That could be something else I could see with a 7th house Mercury. Now Mercury in the 8th house, where we're putting the mind in a place that is a little spooky. This is where thoughts delve deep into, kind of some of the more darker or taboo subjects. So things like psychology, metaphysics, finance, anything revolving also around the occult, mysticism definitely I think is part of the 8th house. So, communication with Mercury in the 8th house can be very intense and it can be very secretive, and there can be a tendency to either kind of hold your cards kind of close to your chest, not want to quite tell people what you're thinking. But there can also be a tendency of being able to read other people very well with this placement and almost feeling like you can kind of, predict what people are going to say before they open their mouth. Because you're anticipating or you're kind of reading their mind with that Mercury in the 8th. Really excellent researchers as well. These are like people who are just like natural researchers and people who could very easily be PIs. Now Mercury in the 9th house, this basically means that they have a love for higher learning. It might also mean that they're bilingual and they have had a higher education, or they appreciate philosophy and they really love travel and going to foreign lands. Communication is broad, right? 9th house is big. It's a Jupiter house. So they can be very philosophical in how they see the world and how they communicate and teach other people. Very focused on education. And I've seen a lot of these people that are involved in travel writing. I've seen some of these people who are involved in writing laws. Teachers, professors with some of these placements, people who speak on global spiritual topics can also be a theme. Scholars, definitely with Mercury in the 9th house. And then Mercury in the 10th house is where the mind is going to be on career, reputation, public image. there's a need to be recognized anytime you have a planet in the 10th house or near the midheavens. So wanting to be recognized for your intellect or your communication skills, right? Wanting to be heard. It's like the people who are in a boardroom meeting, and they want to make sure everybody's listening to what they have to say. Some of these people, become famous for, public speaking, media, politics, because their ability to really communicate and draw in a lot of respect or a lot of authority because they're able to communicate so effectively. I think it's like a really big theme with some of these placements. A lot of prominent authors can have Mercury in the 10th house. And a lot of also like well-known, people who are also kind of connected to like business, because the 10th house is the top of the chart. So like really well-known or like reputable CEOs can have that placement, especially people who are involved in like international companies. I've seen that a lot for some of those CEOs. And then Mercury in the 11th house, where we're putting the communication planet into a house that is associated with groups, the crowd, masses, social causes, technology, futuristic things. They're very innovative when it comes to thinking. They're inclusive when it comes to wanting to speak to large numbers of people and not just being solely focused on what they think. I think of like the 11th house as like the internet. So like Mercury in the 11th house can definitely be somebody who's kind of like a little internet famous in some way. Very much potentially involved in social media, tech startups, activism, anywhere where they can use their communication in a network where they can promote their causes. Is definitely what I see here. And sometimes the life of the party, the person who's like sending out, all like the, parties at my place and kind of connects and brings like a group of people together. Social as well, very focused in staying active and in contact with some of their social connections. And then finally, we have Mercury in the 12th house. So we're putting Mercury in the house that deals with being introspective or being intuitive or hidden. It can go one of two ways here. Certainly 12th house can have this energy of being very spiritual. So there can be a talent for writing, especially fiction or poetry, sci-fi, otherworldly things can be great with Mercury in the 12th house, working behind the scenes. But there can also be a tendency to be a little private, a little bit more reclusive, finding it difficult or challenged to communicate or tell people what you think or how you've been feeling sometimes. And Mercury in the 12th house, planets in the 12th house, Mercury and Uranus would be the two planets that I would say that I've noticed these people have a tendency to have like precognitive dreams, or, they'll have visions and things from the future, or maybe they're drawn to divination practices like tarot, astrology, anything where they're doing, dream analysis, that would be really good with Mercury in the 12th house. But I have seen some people who write like mysteries or thrillers that have this placement. People who work in, top secret fields, or maybe like in espionage, or people who use their intuition in psychological counseling. That's something else that I see a lot of with Mercury in the 12th house. So I hope that that's helpful in giving you guys a little bit more insight into the Zodiac's favorite helpers. Don't forget to leave me a comment below and let me know, do you have any placements in Virgo or in the 6th house, and how has it played out for you? Do you resonate with any of these, potential, character analysis that I've given you guys here today? I like to do this when the planets, obviously, when the sun is in the sun sign, but it's always great when we can also get other planets, especially the ruler of that particular sign in the skies. So you guys are feeling that. We're having to kind of be a little bit more analytical, a little bit more critical, because planets have been moving through Virgo and they're starting to oppose Saturn as well as Neptune. So use your critical thinking skills over the next couple of weeks. Happy birthday to all of my Virgos. I hope it's a good one for you guys. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps the channel grow. And if you guys want to know more about me or my work, or if you'd like to get a reading with me, check the links in the description below. You can find out my availability as well as see my courses at beyondtheveiledtarot.com. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. I'll catch you guys back here on Thursday. Enjoy the rest of your week. Take care.